Hey nerds, and welcome to Supergirl, Theories and Conspiracies. I'm Brian from Good Nerd Bad Nerd. So we finally got the Season 2 premiere of Supergirl on CW, and it was a great episode. We had Superman in this episode. What more could you ask for? I mean, I do not like what they were doing with his cowl, but everything else about how they presented him I think was great. Clark Kent's side of him, the Superman side of him, they were all fantastic. But he only plays into a little bit of what was important about this episode. And so I just there's a lot of things to talk about, so I'm going to run through them real quick because I know a lot of them are going to come up again later in the season. So first, Lena Luthor. We've talked about her before. I know I've mentioned some of the different versions of her that this character would be based off of or could be based off of. And there's one that was possessed by Brainiac and then was traded away by Brainiac and was actually Lex's daughter. That's probably not going to be the one that they're using. Instead, they're probably going to be the one who touched the space brain and got psychic powers and empathic powers. I say that kind of in jest because we're probably not going to see her get those abilities, but her backstory fits. She's ashamed, and her family was ashamed of Luthor after he went evil, so they kind of separated themselves. They changed their last name to Thoral, as kind of a anagram of Luthor, just to kind of distance themselves. So there's a lot more that's based off of that character that I think we're going to see. Who knows? Maybe she will touch a space brain and get psychic and empathic abilities. Hard to say at this point. Next, Miss Tess Mesher. She is a great character, and this is a bigger point about how this episode paid homage to Superman 1, Superman the movie. You had her, who in the movie was Lex Luthor's assistant, and now she's here as Cat Grant's assistant. It might be a coincidence that they introduced her the same episode they're introducing Luthor and Luthor's sister, but maybe she's a spy. It's hard to say. But other things, you had Wynn referencing the earthquake attack of Luthor. You had Luthor being put in jail, which happened right at the end of the movie. You have the helicopter rescue. There's a lot of things in this episode that are paying homage to that Superman 1 movie, and this character is just one part of it. Even how Cat Grant is yelling for her is a reference to that film. So, love that. Next, we have Cara as a reporter. This was kind of at the end of season 1, Cat gave Cara the opportunity to pick whatever job she wanted. And what does she pick? Well, initially something with marketing or whatever, but she wants to be a reporter. And from the Silver Age comics, this actually makes sense. She had a lot of different careers, a lot of different jobs and things at different times, but some of the key ones, she was a grad student who was studying acting. She was a student counselor. She finally ended up as a TV actress on a soap opera, but she was also a TV reporter at one time. So this is very true to the comics. She does do reporting, and just from a storytelling point of view, it gets rid of that whole, why is she never in the office? Well, she's never in the office because she's out looking for stories. She's doing her job. And this makes sense, and it's just a shame that because of this change, we're not going to see as much of Cat Grant, but it's still, it makes sense, it fits with the comic, and it fits with the storytelling point of view. So, next, Superman and John Jones. These two did not seem to like each other. They were giving each other the cold shoulder. And the reason we find out is because there was an incident, they both showed up, and there was kryptonite involved, and Superman wanted to destroy it, but John took it and secured it at the DEO, and Superman was not okay with this. Of course, Superman being an upstanding citizen, he wasn't just going to barge into a government facility and take it. Now, John wanted it in case there were any bad Kryptonians out there, which, funny, there were. Superman just doesn't trust anyone with kryptonite except himself, because he doesn't want anyone to use it against him. A little naive to think that he's going to be the only one they will need it to use against, but it's a good thing they did have it to fight Non and all the other Kryptonians that got out of the Phantom Zone. Next, John Corben. He was the mercenary this episode, and in the comics, he was a highly trained mercenary. That is until he got really seriously injured and was turned into Metallo. There are a lot of different kind of versions of this character, a lot of different visual appearances. If you want to get a great origin story from him, go to the Superman the Animated series. He's a mercenary there, he's very tough, he was hired by Luthor, just like in this case. And then he gets turned into Metallo after he gets injured. we know he's being turned into Metallo, partly because they name dropped it at the very end of the episode, but also it's just, this is what John Corben's path in life is. Now, as Metallo, beyond all of the things that come with having a cyborg body, like essentially invulnerability and immortality, he also is powered by kryptonite. So he's a weapon designed specifically for Superman or Supergirl. And with that kryptonite power source, he can fire kryptonite energy projections. So he is a highly trained mercenary designed for killing Superman. So he is definitely going to come back into play, and fingers crossed, and what I'm going to get to at the end, for a very big storyline that could, that I feel like they've been building to. But before we get to that, next, Cadmus. Project Cadmus, the Cadmus group, originally the DNA project. Again, I talked about this last year when we found out that Alex and Cara's dad was kidnapped by them. But if you just need a quick recap, they're into DNA manipulation, they're into cloning. They created the new Superboy, who was a clone of Superman and Lex, and they've made tons of clones of this character named the Guardian. That doesn't seem like that big of a deal, or would come into play necessarily, except for the fact that the show just released an image of Jimmy Olsen in his Guardian costume. It's all white, so it's different than the costume in the comics. But the fact that we're seeing the Guardian and we have Project Cadmus, I think we're going to see a lot of overlap with those characters. And really, there's no way of knowing what is going to come out. It's possible that because some of the creatures they created at Project Cadmus have mind control abilities, that they're going to take control of Jimmy's mind. They're going to brainwash him, they're going to mind control him to work for them, maybe as a spy, maybe as just someone to fight for them. In many cases, Guardian is their head of security. So just something to be on the lookout for to see how this really does play out. And then finally, and this is the thing I'm going to take most time on, is my big theory for what is happening, what is leading up to. Metallo, we've had Reactron, we've got Non, we've got all of these big characters, and they all lead to the New Krypton storyline. New Krypton was basically a second chance at a Kryptonian planet. Cara's mom actually was in charge of it because she escaped the destruction of Krypton in the bottle city of Kandor, which is something that I'm still hoping we'll see, because Brainiac is another character that plays into the events on New Krypton and the destruction of New Krypton. But Metallo and Reactron play a huge role in that. In fact, it is Reactron who's responsible for the destruction of New Krypton and over almost 100,000 Kryptonians. So a lot is possible. They are introducing all of the characters that are important to that storyline. It's definitely worth checking out if you're not familiar with it. It's a long storyline. It's very involved, and you know, who knows? General Zod's in it. We might be getting him. Let's just that's where I think this is heading. Tell me what you think. But who knows? I would love to see Brainiac and in some form. We've already gotten kind of a version of him with Indigo, but it's hard to see. I don't see Indigo being the one who has the bottle city of Kandor. So, and Brainiac does travel through time, and he's kind of this imposing sentient being. So it's definitely something to pay attention to, and I think it would be a great way to pay off everything they are building to. So that's what I think Supergirl Season 2 is heading towards. What do you think? What do you think is happening with Cadmus? Do you think we are going to get the clone of Superboy? What did you think of Superman? What did you think of his costume? So much to know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. And until next week, I'm Brian from Good Nerd, Bad Nerd, and this has been Supergirl Theories and Conspiracies.